Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel Peterisms, where I tell stories of my life and just little things that I have learned as I have grown into the person that I am today. And today I'm going to read meditations, as I often do over here. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 books. So we're going to kind of, the dogs are upstairs with my husband right now. So we're going to see, they're not going to pick out the book today, but isn't that cute when Boo and Tucker pick out what book I'm going to read? We are going to just randomly see, here I'm going to spread them all out, and then I'm going to, of course, I come to the Daily Book of Positive Quotations by Linda Picone, which is like the book that I start with every single day. All right, let's read February 7th for today and see what it has to say to us. Virtues. Courage is the ladder on which all the other virtues mount. Claire Booth Luce. Is it Lucy or Luce? Read that again. February 7th, virtues. Courage is a ladder on which all other virtues mount. Claire Booth, I think it's Lucy, I don't know why. We like to think of ourselves as being basically good people. People with high values, people who do the right thing. And most of the time, we probably are. But if we lie because we're afraid to take responsibility for something we've done, if we remain silent when we hear sexist, racist, or other types of hurtful comments, if we fail to act when we see injustice, how virtuous are we really? It takes courage to live our virtues and make them real. I won't put my values aside simply because it makes my life easier. I was just talking about this not too long ago on a video, I think it was on this channel, and I was talking about the movie The Contender, which is one of my all-time favorite movies of life, and I will kind of recap it for you if you didn't hear me talk about it that day. The Contender is about this woman that gets nominated to be a Supreme Court justice. And when she is going through the process of all of it, there are these alleged photos that come out from when she was in college, where she was participating in kind of, at the time, this illicit like sexual act. And so she has to go through this whole trial, and they keep on bringing all these things up, and she won't address it. She just will not address it, right? And so at the end, the guy who plays the president, I can't remember who plays it, but Jeff Bridges, he finds out that the pictures have been doctored. They're completely fake. It wasn't her at all this kind of stuff. And he says to her, and I think this is such a sign of integrity, you know? He says to her at the end, you knew all along that they were fake. Why didn't you say something? And she says, it was never theirs to ask in the first place. And I love that line so much, because the idea that other people have the intrusive right to ask you personal questions about things that you have gone through, things that may be true, may not be true, you know, that people think that even if they knew the answers, that they would fully understand, you know, what your life had been like or what that was like at that time. So I love that statement, right? Like that it wasn't never theirs to ask in the first place, you know? And then she says, and this is probably one of my favorite quotes of life, of which you guys know that there are many. Maya Angelou, Oprah, on and on and on, Janis Joplin. But this is one of my favorite quotes of life. And I joked about this in this video that I did not too long ago, and I said that it's not her quote. The writer of the movie should, you know, get an Academy Award or an Oscar just for this quote. But the quote is, principles only mean something if we stick to them when they're inconvenient. And I think that it's such a, you know, it's such a fantastic quote. I remember back in the day being around people that would make gay jokes a lot. And it was very uncomfortable for me. And this was not when I was in high school. This was when I was older. You know, I would be at, you know, a work function or a conference or somebody, you know, something like that. And, you know, people would make some kind of like offhanded like gay joke, and I would just stand there. And many times I would just laugh, you know, because I was happy that I at least fit in for once, you know, so I mean, they knew I was gay, but it was like, you know, and typically they would turn to me and they would say things like, oh, we're just joking, right? You know, but it was very uncomfortable for me. And so I can remember there was a point when I was like, I'm no longer going to be part of this anymore. Like, I'm no longer going to be part of this joke. And it was hard. I can remember there was this like one guy that I was around a lot, you know, and whenever I would have to go to these different things, and I was always like telling these completely like inappropriate gay jokes, right? Which, you know, maybe on a good day, whatever, I could have found some humor in them, but it always made me feel isolated from the group. And so he said something, and I kind of like turned and like walked away, and he said something to me about it later. He was like, oh, I was just joking, right? And I remembered this quote that I had heard from Ellen DeGeneres when she was talking about a similar situation, and she said, but see, we're both not laughing, right? And I think that's is that it's like sticking to your integrity and things like that. And, you know, there have been many moments in my life when I have been the joke teller and, or what I thought was funny at the time, which wasn't funny to somebody else. And I've learned, you know, a lot. It's interesting because I'm listening currently to Proof of Heaven by Dr. Eben Alexander, which is about his near-death experience. And then last night I started watching all these near-death experiences on, some of which were on Oprah, but on YouTube I was watching them. And it was interesting, this like common theme that I found, and he talks about it in his book too, is that when we do this kind of like our life review or our life judgment, so to speak, that people believe that, you know, at the end of our lives, if there's an afterlife, we have this kind of like review where we go through everything that's happened in our life. I thought this was an interesting concept, and I had never really heard of this before, that the pain that we have inflicted on other people, we feel ourselves. And there was this one guy that was on this Oprah show, and if you look it up, it's the Oprah show where she had Betty Eadie, who wrote Embraced by the Light, on there. And he had been pinned underneath a semi and had this near-death experience where he said he went to heaven and all this kind of stuff. And he said that he had been abusive to his wife for years and years and years, and he came back and he was like this completely changed man. And he said that he, it was funny because Oprah turned to him afterwards and she goes, like, that's a pretty cool idea though, right? That's what she says. And so he said, you know, I didn't just like get to hear what I had done to my wife or get to see how I had affected her. Like, I was my wife. I felt what it felt like to be in that situation. Like, I felt the physical, emotional, and, you know, pain that she had gone through and how powerful that was, right? And I don't think we really know sometimes the effect that we have on other people. And I thought about that and I was like, wow, you know, like that's really, like that's powerful, you know, to really like, even as like a philosophical idea, to think about being inside of somebody else's pain that we've inflicted on them. So I think that, you know, that's one of the things I've really learned in the last year, is that the words that I use affect other people, and the things I say and the things I do, you know? And I want to be a better version of that. And I, you know, want to use my language with love. I want to lift people up instead of tear people down. I think that in sticking to our virtues and in sticking to our principles, it's sometimes hard to do that, especially when you're in a group of people. You know, it's like we talk about peer pressure with like teenagers and stuff, but how many times have you been in a situation as an adult where you're in a group of friends and they're talking about a friend that is not present to defend themselves and you say nothing? Or how many times have you, you know, been part of a situation where somebody makes an inappropriate joke and you don't correct them because it's just easier just to not say something, and maybe even later you say something to your other friend and say, wasn't that inappropriate? How many times have you been, you know, present for something that just wasn't okay and you didn't say anything, right? Because it's just easier. And those are superficial ideas. I mean, think about it on a bigger level, you know? I think we've all done that. I know I have, right? But that's not who I want to be. And if me offending somebody by sticking up for what I believe in or what I idealize that I want to be like, this better person, if me sticking up for what is the better or the right thing to do, from learning how I have hurt others in the past or how others have hurt me, if I lose somebody as a result of that because they're so short-minded that they can't see that I'm just standing up for myself or for the right thing, then maybe that's not somebody that I need to be around, you know? So I think, like, you know, it's about really figuring out what your principles are, what your virtues and your morals are, and then choosing to stick with them. And I know over time that's changed for me. You know, I had to like do tons of inventory and evaluation and look at who I had been to realize who I wanted to be going forward. And some of it was not fun to look at. It wasn't at all. But it really helped me mold my morals and my principles and decide, well, who do I want to be going forward? You know, who are the people that I look up to in my life because they do have these morals or they do have these principles? Who are those people that I want to look up to, you know? So I think it's a really good meditation. Okay, let's pick another random Yeah, and I'm real obsessed with the near-death experience things right now. Okay. Ooh, meditations for living in balance. Daily solutions for people who do too much. That's me. Ann Wilson Chef. Okay, let's go to February 7th. Toss, refer, act, or file. Oh, I have no idea what this is going to be about. This will be interesting. Executive coach, best-selling author, and noted executive organizer Stephanie Winston has come up with a simple and enormously effective way to tame the paper tiger. She has named it TRAF, which stands for Toss, Refer, Act, or File. Roger Browner. This is a completely different meditation, isn't it? TRAF. It sounds so simple, doesn't it? Let's work backwards. File. For many of us, there is very little that comes in. I'm not, like, this is not the meditation I want to read today. This is completely something else. So let me pick a different meditation. Healing After Loss. Daily Meditations for Working Through Grief by Martha Whitmore Hickman. I'll read that one another day, but like, especially after I just went through the junk drawer on my review channel, I think we'll do that a different day. Okay, February 7th. When is it dark enough? When it is dark enough, you can see the stars. Charles Beard. Often it is easiest to see the stars in the long, cold nights of winters. People who have come through any kind of life-threatening event, a crash, a tornado, a severe illness, speak of how it has changed your perspective. Likewise, when we suffer through the loss of a loved one, it is easier to see what's important. Several years after our daughter died, we experienced a burglary. All of our wedding silver was stolen, as well as some antique pieces that have been handed down through many generations. Of course we were upset, but right away the words came to me. It's only things. I have no way of knowing whether or not I'd have been this calm had the theft occurred before her death, but I suspect not. The stars are not only clear, but more beautiful. Ancient navigators found their way through the seas by looking at the stars. So maybe the experience of loss not only helps clarify what is important to us, but also helps us know where we are and the direction in which we want to go. In the extremity of darkness, I will look up and see the stars. What a fantastic meditation. I was thinking at the beginning of it, it was interesting because I think because Pee-Pee's passing is like the nearest passing that's happened recently, when I was writing my book, I would take him outside, you know, like while I was sitting over there writing throughout the night, and I would like look up at the stars while I was standing out there while he was going potty and stuff, so I don't know, I was just thinking of that. But, you know, I think when I look back on my life and the loss that I've experienced, and not even just loss through death, but, you know, loss of a friendship, or, you know, the ending of a career, or ending of a job, or, you know, the ending of, like, finishing school. Like, that was big for me, you know, like the end of high school, the end of college and graduate school and those things. You know, all of these huge moments in life, I don't do real well with closure. I don't do real well with the end of things. And I think what I know that is in those moments, you know, like when my mom passed, or when my aunt passed away, or, you know, like with Pee-Pee recently, which has hit me so hard, you know. I think that within that moment or the days surrounding it, nothing else really compares to importance to my experience that I had and the privilege that I had to have that person, or in that case, that pet in my life, you know, or to have that friend in my life at one point, you know, or whatever. It's like, nothing really compares to that. Like, I don't really care about the rest of it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't really, I don't want to talk about TV shows, and I don't want to talk about world events in that moment. I don't really care, you know, like, and I know that that sounds crazy, but when you go through something like that, it's like in that moment, like, I'm not even talking about in that moment, I'm talking about weeks later. Like with my mom, it was weeks later, you know. People would want to talk to me about something, and I just, like, in my head, I'd just be like, I don't care. Like, my mom's gone. Like, that's just what I kept on thinking was, my mom's gone. Like, I don't care, you know? And so, I think it's important. I think that's an important part of the grieving process, you know, is to acknowledge that. I don't want to not care about worldly things. I love talking about books. I love talking about movies. I love talking about world events. I think it's important for us to be of the world, of the living world. But, you know, I think it would be nice if we could also, I don't know, bottle that up and remember it in times that somebody hasn't just passed recently, or we haven't just left a career, or graduated from school, or, you know, lost a friend, or a romantic situation. If we could bottle it up, you know, in that moment, and kind of remember what that's like to feel that, that it doesn't matter. Like, there are more important things in the world, you know, that really matter to me on a deeper level. Like, this is superficial. This doesn't matter, you know? But I, like everybody else, forget that, you know? And so when I'm going through something, it's like I can be stuck in traffic and be like, you know, and in that moment, that traffic is the most important thing, right? So it's about pulling out those tools, pulling out those skills, and remembering. I think it's important to remember, you know, what we went through as a point of reference, in remembering that there are more important things in life, you know? And I think also, in going through like really hard times, you know, I think there's levels of hard times. You know, there's things that are like 1s, and then there are things that are 10s, you know? So in asking myself, is this like a 10, or is this a 1, or is this a 4, or is this a 7? Like, how upset should I be getting about this? When I look back on my life, at the end of my life, is what is going on right now today, you know, the fact that, I don't know, I'm just trying to think of something random, you know, like, well, I was at Macy's today and I was trying to, you know, find a pair of pants and they didn't have my size. I was getting frustrated, right? Like, is this a 10? Like, is this really a 10? Like, at the end of my life, am I going to look back on this? No, it's stupid. You know, so I took a second there and I kind of like took a deep breath and I was like, you know what? I've got enough pants at home. I don't need to find a pair of pants, but I did buy a sweater. So, but you know what I mean? Like, it's just not that deep. And I allow myself to get I allow myself to borrow trouble and get so upset about things that just don't even matter, right? If that same situation had happened to me at a different time, you know, like, I could care less, because it doesn't matter. It pales in comparison to losing a parent, or losing a pet, or losing a friend, or whatever, you know, a job, or, you know, leaving your career, or graduating from high school. It pales in comparison to that, you know? So when you look at those things in comparison to these trivial things that we go throughout the day, it's like, those things aren't really that important. And I think it's easier then to look at the stuff that does happen and go, okay, I don't need to get this upset about it. Like, it's just not worth it, you know? So anyway, that was a good meditation. I really, really like this book, Healing After Loss, Daily Meditations for Working Through Grief, by Martha Whitmore Hickman. And it's interesting because this book was given to me by somebody whose son actually passed away from sudden sniffing death syndrome, and I'm very, very close with them. And yeah, she wrote this thing in here about how this book had really helped her, and somebody gave it to her when he passed away, and so she gave it to me when my mom passed away, and it was really, really helpful to me. She's actually the woman that everybody was saying to me after my mom died, you know, it's like, you need to move on, you need to move on. And I called her and I said, you know, people tell me that I need to move on. Like, I don't know what to do with that. Like, how do you do that? And she said, no, she said, you know, we don't ever really move on. We move through, and we carry them with us, and they'll always be a part of everything that we do going forward, you know, but we don't ever really move on from this. We move through it. And I love that. I still, you know, say that today. And even when I say, like, by accident, like, I've moved on, or it's time to move on, or whatever, like, I catch myself and I'm like, no, I meant like move through, because I love that saying. So anyway, let me know what you think about those meditations. I hope you guys are having a fantastic start to your weekend. I love you, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.